All right. I believe we are live. I'm going to check this out real quick and make sure that we're good to go on my other monitor here just to make sure that everything's working right. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I think we're working. All right, very good. I'm going to start it here in just a second. Going to make sure that it's working on my other stream. I'm kind of new at live streaming, so I want to make sure. There we go. Okay, got it. We have confirmed we have audio and stuff. All right, going to get these out of my ears. Well, welcome to everyone who is watching. And thank you very much for tuning in. Twin Steel, hey, audio works awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad. Can never be too careful. I've had my fair share of audio problems. Twin Steel, great to see you in the chat. Into the Wind, thank you so much for popping in. Thank you so much. Today we're talking about being a new GM. Like, what can you do? What do new GMs need to do to get started, to play with D&D, to be a good GM, to avoid some of the common traps and pitfalls? And that's what I'm kind of going to go over. And I would love to have some. Great to see you too, Twin Steel. This is so cool. It's so cool to be able to interact with the chat like in real time. It's so cool. Now, I'm going to basically go over 4 traps that new GMs sometimes fall into. I'm going to try not to look at the chat. I'm looking at the chat because it's so cool. Look at the camera. But 4 traps that new GMs sometimes fall into. And then I've actually got 8 steps, just kind of basic words of encouragement that I would encourage new GMs to do. Just kind of 8 steps, 8 tips. Now, this video was actually inspired by a question from Azazel7942. And basically, they said, new to GMing, do you have a starter guide? Garrick Strangle, hey, how's it going? Great to see you in the chat. Great to see you. Thank you, everyone, for showing up and popping in. I really appreciate it. It's so awesome. So basically, this is a big topic, talking about what a new DM should do, how they can avoid some of the common pitfalls, how they can have a great game, without stressing about it, still have fun, and what are the important things. And you know what, chat, I'm going to ask you, there's enough people in here, and I know there's some experienced gamers in here, to drop me your number 1 tip, what you think GMs need to know, what they need to do, the number 1 tip for getting started. If you're an inexperienced GM, maybe getting ready to run your first game, how do you avoid some of the common pitfalls, and how do you make it awesome for your players? Okay. Dank Money, glad to be here. Love the channel and advice. Hope it blows up for you. Hey, thank you so much, Dank Money. I really appreciate it. I have a little bit of a kind of a fun announcement. We are launching a Discord channel literally next week. The channel is being built right now. I've kind of teamed up with someone who's pretty good with running Discord. Personally, I am not. I'm not a Discord pro. In fact, I log into Discord on my browser, and when people see me do that, like real Discord people, they're like, "You haven't even downloaded the app," and I'm like, "I don't even know what's going on." I'm lucky if I get into voice chat on Discord. Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm not a Discord super user either. Yeah, me neither. Don't over prepare. Don't under. Oh, okay. So Garrick Strangle just shared actually a tip, and I'm going to grab that real quick. I'm going to copy that and put it in my notes here because I want to include that tip. All right, great tip actually. I'm going to share that when we get here. Make a note here. All right, very good. So if you would drop your tips in that chat, that'd be awesome. And I'm just going to kind of go over this. So the thing about running a game for the first time is that there is kind of a lot of stress because in a way you're a leader. You're leading a group activity, a community activity in a game. And obviously you don't want to mess it up. Obviously you don't want to waste people's time. Obviously you want people to come back. You want them to enjoy the game. You want them to have a fun time, right? And so there's a lot of pressure to perform. It's like, well, what if I do a bad job? What if I don't get a rule right? What if I don't prepare enough? That kind of thing. With that being said, and I believe that Garrick Strangle's comment here, which I'm going to share in just a second, I don't want to give it away too soon. Oh, nice. Into the Wind. Yeah, talking about Discord. So I feel like the thing about being a new GM is that it's really easy to kind of psych yourself out and to like think too much about it. And I think that a lot of GMs who have gotten 10 games under their belt or 20 games under their belt will quickly realize that the truth is you probably thought it was going to be way harder than it was. And to be really honest, it's about channeling your creativity, and it's about interacting with the players and interfacing with them in a manner that's going to facilitate the best shared storytelling. And that's really what it is. And it's so when you think about it in those terms, at least for me, it lets me off the hook. Twin Steel, awesome tip. I'm gonna grab that, put it in my notes here. I love to share these tips from all of you experienced GMs out there who know what's up. Thank you for that very much. All right, so here are my 4 traps, and you can all tell me what you think about these. But these are my 4 traps I think GMs fall into. I think these are the 4 biggest traps. Maybe it's just me and I fell into all these traps. But number 1, trying too hard to force a story or a particular narrative. Okay, I would come up with a story and I would try to force the players into it. And that's like probably the number 1 like classic bad idea. Coming up with a story is a good idea. Coming up with some kind of plan is a great idea, but it's probably going to get changed. And if you try to like cram the players into that, then you run into railroading, obviously. So that's a pretty basic tip. But I think that a lot of GMs kind of try too hard at first with a story because they believe that that's like a responsibility to have to perform. But the truth is that like less is more. A lot of times a story is just little bitty parts. Like, there's a conflict. Well, actually there's a hook, there's a conflict, and then there's like a resolution, generally speaking. And if you can come up with just those 3 things, and it can even be like it could even be as simple as 3 sentences, then you're probably going to run into a situation where you have plenty to go on, and you can flesh out obviously like stat blocks for goons and that kind of thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about things to do in a minute, but my number 2, spending too much time either stressing about particular rules or literally looking them up. I used to make this mistake a lot. I would sometimes have someone try to, like, for example, back in 3rd edition, someone try to grapple. And I would I don't know how to resolve grappling. Hold on. And I would spend 15 minutes reading through the rule book. And now I look back on that, I think I wish I would have never done that. I don't want to slow the game down. Have a basic understanding of the rules, do the best you can with the time you have to prepare. Not everyone has, weeks of time to prepare reading the book over and over again, but read what you can read, start with the most important things. And then if you run into a situation where you need a rule and you're not quite sure of it, just do a common sense thing. If you have a rules lawyer type player at the table, they'll probably be very quick to correct you. And then maybe you can use their advice, or you can just go ahead with what you decided. Stressing about it too isn't really worth it, because to be really honest, it's going to be pretty minimal that players care about that kind of thing too much. That's a little different, like with spells. You don't want to be like, trying to be too creative with spells. You do want to look up the spells if you don't know what they do, because that is going to be something that players will get a little upset about, and for good reason, because spells are like a very specific thing, just like class features and class like type abilities are a really specific thing. But if it's like a skill check or some kind of like more obscure thing, then you can kind of just roll with what you think. Just make it a basic check if nothing else, and that's totally okay. You don't have to get kind of like too wrapped up in, oh no, I don't know exactly what kind of check to do. Into the Wind, great comment. I'm gonna grab that and I'm gonna share it here. I'm gonna put it in my notes for the things to do. All right. Number 3 on my list of traps that GMs can sometimes get into. Getting too flustered when the players veer off course. This used to kind of make me feel a little bit weird. It's actually weird to think about this. I'd get a little frustrated. And I think part of it was because I felt like I had a game in mind, I had a story in mind. When players were veering off course, it was like I wasn't doing a good job. It must not have been a good story or something. And it's not true at all. The truth is that players are going to veer off course. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so how you deal with that actually could very well determine what your mettle is as a GM, what you're made of. The more comfortable you get, just going with the flow, even when things do not go as planned, that's going to make you a more fun GM to play with, to be honest, because part of the whole shtick with D&D or any TTRPG is the creativity and doing things that you probably wouldn't do in normal life. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to put a rope on an arrow and try to shoot it, across a cliff and swing across anytime soon. That's not really a thing I do in my day-to-day life. I will try it in D&D though, right? And it may not be in the GM's plan, but I think that it's important for new GMs to realize that players are going to do wild things. And rather than oh, hey, Agile Monk, great to see you. Great to see you in the chat. Hey, I'm so pumped and grateful that so many people are popping in and say hi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm new to this kind of live chat thing, so I'm still trying to figure out how it works. I'm just glad I could get my video to show and get the audio to show. This is a huge win. But anyway. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm trying to really increase the quality of my videos. I'm releasing a video at the beginning of next week that I've put a lot of work into. So I hope you guys like it. And we're just going to see. I'm just going to try to kind of figure out how to get better at the YouTube thing. I want to get better at it. But anyway, so yeah, don't get too flustered when players veer off course. And then trap number 4, being too critical of themselves after the game. This was a big one for me. Hey, Benjamin, all good. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that so much. I'm so grateful that people tune in and listen and that they interact. I love it so much. Oh yeah, great just the way they are, but always improving. Hey, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I do want to be improving. And I think it's fun. I think YouTube is a really fun challenge. I never used to consider myself any kind of like a video guy. My work for the past couple decades has been like, I'm a writer actually, and I have done very little video work, but I've gotten more and more into video type things over time. So I really enjoy that. So yeah, it's super new to me, super fun. But anyway, so trap number 4, being too critical of themselves after the game. I don't want players to be critical of themselves after the game. I don't want a GM to be critical of themselves. This is perhaps the biggest trap that I've fallen into. And it is that like after a game, I would ruminate on like the mistakes I thought I made. And then I would like talk myself into believing I did a terrible job. And that's like, if I could go back in time and tell myself to stop that, like immediately, I would, because the truth is that is super easy to do, but it is not a good thing to do. You should never beat yourself up. If you make mistakes, if you don't think the session went well, if you feel like the session wasn't, as good as you wanted it to be, or the vibe wasn't as good, there are some sessions where the vibe is high and you're like, heck yeah, I love this. And there are some sessions where the vibe is like, I don't know if anyone liked that. Like that, those are real things. And so, but don't be critical of yourself, because that's a natural high and low. And the truth is, sometimes everyone just wants to come and sit down and hang out, and they're gonna, drink an energy drink, and they're gonna eat some snacks, and they're gonna role play, and it may not be a super crazy high energy vibe, and that's okay. Don't be critical of yourself if those things happen. And even if you make mistakes, I have actually a note about that here in a minute, how to deal with mistakes, but don't be critical of yourself after the game. Don't beat yourself up. Get yourself a milkshake and celebrate after you run a good session, because it's actually work, but it's fun work. And it's when I say it's work, I don't mean it in a negative context. I mean it in like a sense of like, you put effort into that, you put your time into that, you showed up on time, you performed your duty as the GM. And so you deserve to feel good about it, even if it was like maybe less than perfect. And I don't know about you, but I've never yet run a perfect session. There's always some kind of mistake, something to be made a little better. It's not something to be upset about. It's just something to think about next time. All right. And with that being said, we're going to transition into the what should you do? And I'm going to go through some of this feedback I've gotten from you awesome people in the chat here. Let's see, there's a couple. What is your writing work for? So as my professional job work, career, etc., I have mostly been a digital marketer, mostly writing marketing, copywriting to sell stuff. Originally more blog writing, and then I got into things like copywriting, email marketing, that kind of thing. So, I've written a couple books that are not really available because they're kind of older and they didn't really do much. They're just more projects that I wanted to work on. I have ghost written books for other people too, and that kind of thing. Into the Wind. Into the Wind just shared something that I think is applicable right now, and I'm going to share it. Work is force over distance. If you think about that for a second, that's actually a very wise thing to say. Very wise thing to say. Light Fighter Gaming says lactose intolerant. I'm not sure what that means. I don't think I'm lactose intolerant, but I don't know. I haven't been diagnosed. Let's just put it that way. I don't know. Okay, so we have some more advice here from TSL Frontman. I think I said that right. I think that's probably how you would pronounce it. All right, I'm going to read this advice from you fine folks here first before I jump into my 8 points, because you guys covered some awesome stuff. First of all, Garrick Strangle said, don't over prepare, don't under prepare, and don't sweat it. I said grab a milkshake. Yeah, okay. Now I am at least non-lactose intolerant enough to be able to drink a milkshake without suffering. So maybe I'm not lactose intolerant. That's what you meant. Okay. Garrick Strangle said, don't over prepare, don't under prepare, and don't sweat it. I think this is a fantastic tip. This is awesome. I have a tip that's very similar to this that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Twin Steel said, tips. I think new DMs are super awesome for taking the plunge. It's a scary job, but players usually understand that and just appreciate you being there. My advice is to go easy on yourself. I think that's awesome advice. Very, very good advice. The players do appreciate you being there, and they really appreciate it even if you don't do it perfectly. The one thing players may not appreciate is if you don't treat them right, or if you try to take away too much of their agency. Even if you make the mistake of taking away a little agency, just as a means of just as a natural recourse of not being experienced, a lot of players will be like, oh, no, I totally understand. You don't want to get into the habit of railroading your players as a general rule, but even so, the fact of the matter is a lot of players are very, very thankful just to have someone running a game. And even if it is not perfect, it's still a creative outlet and it's still fun, and you should not beat yourself up about it. So great tips there, Twin Steel. Dank Bunny's dropping some awesome tips. I'm going to grab these and put them in my list. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dank Money, for these tips. I'm going to drop them in here and we're going to go over them. All right. Into the Wind advice. Same advice as public speaking. Your audience, as your players, want you to succeed. Don't worry about making minor mistakes and solicit feedback. This is excellent advice. Soliciting feedback is actually really good advice. And I have found that if you kind of take a minute after every session and be like, hey, what did you like? What didn't you like? Let me know. A lot of players are happy to give you some feedback. Sometimes if they're super nice, they don't want to give you constructive criticism, you might have to pry it out of them a little bit. Offer them inspiration the next session if they give you a constructive criticism. Sometimes if they're too nice, but anyway. All right, TSL Frontman said, my best advice for new masters is just two things. Rehearse the physical things you need and start with a mostly linear one shot that the players will find familiar, not some world-changing heartbreaker. This is actually really good advice, and to be honest, that's exactly how I got my start. I actually jumped into playing RPGs, trying to run a long campaign, and I couldn't even get through one session without falling apart. And the players literally being like, this is boring, let's go play basketball. Because I was a teenager. I was 15 when I tried to run my first game, and we also played basketball. So with that being said, I realized I wasn't good enough to run campaigns. So I started really focusing on running one shots. And then I started running 3 session, short, mini arc campaigns. And I eventually I got to the point where one of those went so well that the players were like, can we please keep going? We don't want to stop. Can we come back next week? And it turned into a very long campaign. I think it lasted a couple months. Then I launched my first real long campaign, which actually was a 2-year campaign, Star Wars campaign back in the day. But anyway, that is super good, TSL Frontman, super good advice. And that actually reminds me of my past with TTRPGs also. Dank Money's dropped some more bomb tips. I'm going to grab these and put them here, put them with the other ones. All right. Thank you, Dank Money, for this. You're dropping all kinds of wisdom here. All right. With that being said, Anthony Sardi said stars and wishes. Thank you so much. Hello, GM Philosopher. I really enjoy videos. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Twin Steel, thank you so much. Love stars and wishes. Can I react to this? Yeah, I think I reacted to it. Yeah, heck yeah. I think I did. Okay, very good. All right. So Dank Money said this. Now, there's a couple tips here, a couple good pointers here. Hey, you too. Good night, Jahantian. Jahanti on Mars. Yeah. Uh, everyone, I'm so pumped about this. There are right now like 11 people in the chat. That's so cool. I'm super pumped. Thank you so much for hanging out and for dropping in and saying hi and sharing your wisdom here. Now I'm going to go through Dank Money's tips. Dank Money has like 5 really good tips here. Start small when it comes to starting the campaign. Starting town, a few key NPCs, extra list of names for the random people they ask to meet, 2 to 3 quests with just the first part of the quest prepped. It's highly likely the players will not pursue what you have prepped. That's the truth. In saying that, do the old improv suggestion, take their input and interest and pivot, add to their wants and build around it. Just have fun with them. I'm beyond happy when my players surprise me. I have a great story about my player who foiled my plans last Sunday. She had the wish card. She was flying her under Pegasus from one end of Waterdeep to the next. If you mean wish card is in the spell wish, things are always going to get wild when someone has wish just ready on standby. Things are going to get wild. Anyway, I had planned a dragon, meaning of the big bad, to do an aerial chase with her. She got 4 rounds in and wished to have dominion over the dragon. I created the pendant of dominion for her. This is extremely overpowered. So the dragon can roll a wisdom saving throw DC 19. Every 24 hours to fight the control for the day. She can attempt Dominion again the next day. Just roll with it, prep an event, and make that event happen where the party is. I love that. Wow. She got Dominion over the dragon. I wonder how long it's going to be till the dragon gets away. And then it just all of a sudden turns into a fight. It's going to follow them. That's the thing, is that situation. And from what it looks like to me, saving throw of 19, the dragon's going to beat that eventually. Every 24 hours, one of these days, the party's going to have a big fight on their hands. It's just a ticking time bomb. One of these days, I wonder what color dragon it is. I'm going to read some of these quotes here. While you're here, please hit the thumbs up. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Light Fighter Gaming. I thought you were talking to me, and I was like, I don't know if I know how to do that. But thank you so much. Tian Tori, hello. Can't stay long. Game starts soon as players get here. But hi. Oh, hey. Awesome. Get some good gaming in. I'm playing tomorrow night. My party meets. We took the previous session off because someone had a wedding to go to. Actually, like 4 of my players attended the wedding. So it's like, I'm super pumped to play. Super pumped. Undead deck of many things card. Ooh, you're a deck of many things kind of person. I will be honest. I have not introduced deck of many things very many times in my games. That gets wild. But kudos to you. It's awesome. Done and done. Light Fighter Gaming. Nice. Okay, Light Fighter Gaming. Oh, I think that they're in the same group actually. We are DC 20 actually, but game time is still game time. Oh yeah, heck yeah, absolutely. DC 20. I think they mean they're playing the game DC 20, not D&D. But anyway, regardless, it's game night. Game night is super important part of life. All right. Thank you so much for these tips. I'm going to run over my tips real quick. I've got 8. To be honest, a lot of these were already covered by some of these awesome tips that you all submitted, but I'm going to go ahead and share them anyway. Number 1, plan out a general story outline. It doesn't have to be super complex. In fact, it should be simple, but a good outline is important, and it can help you have some direction so that you don't get like lost and start to flounder in the story. Generally, have like an encounter or 2 ready that you can bring in if you start to get to a point where you're like, it's ready. We're ready to do something. I should make something happen. This can help to keep you from floundering. And first, improv might be a little challenging for a new GM, so that can kind of help you get a little bit ahead of the game, right? Number 2, create, obtain, or source some kind of map for your world. I find that if you do not do this, guaranteed in the first 5 minutes of gameplay, one of your players is going to ask someone in game for a map, and then you're going to be like having to draw one. It's like, and if you are like me, that is not a good situation to be in. I have done that many times. I do not wish to repeat it. I always make sure I start out with a map. Let's see. Dank Money just says, okay, another tip here. It has turned into the cursed deck of chaos. Oh, talking about the deck of many things. Since they jumped from level 5 to 12 in a day with it, they intimidated the guy who had the deck to take it. Since it was taken with evil means, it changed. Oh, I like that. Actually, that's super cool. T and Tori, I agree with Professor DM. Anything that's 1d20 times X versus DC is in the D&D pavilion. Okay, I'm not totally sure I know what that means, but I think that's a conversation between you, awesome people. Okay, I'm going to go back to my list here, finish it out real quick. Number 3. Make sure you understand at least the basic rules of the game, such as rules pertaining to combat, skill checks, etc. These are really the most important things to kind of get a basic handle on. You're never going to be able to memorize all of the spells unless you play a lot. And looking up spells is a pretty normal thing, but skill checks, combat, those are relatively simple rules. Movement, cover, right? When you get advantage, when you get disadvantage. These are the types of things that are kind of good to know. And so if you're going to do some hardcore studying, study those things. Number 4, familiarize yourself with what the classes chosen by your players can do. Find out what your players are going to play and then research those classes just so you understand their abilities and stuff. And if you don't understand their abilities when you read them at first, because that is actually more common than you would think, just keep reading them, maybe watch a YouTube video or two, try to figure out what they do so that you can understand those mechanics. And that really will help you to prepare for sessions, actually. Light Fighter Gaming said, I've found if you regularly improv, it is easier to come up with something in game. On the other hand, if you don't practice, it can make it difficult and crunch. Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. That's true. With improv, I've never done I was actually in theater as a kid. I was in theater, but I didn't do it because I loved acting. I did it to get out of other classes. If we didn't take, there were only a couple options, and theater was the one with the least amount of book work. so that's why I took theater in high school. However, I actually found out that I really enjoyed it. And one of my favorite things about D&D is acting out NPCs and stuff and villains. I love making the voices and stuff. It's it's so much fun. Sebastian Stark, hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for popping in. I'm really happy to see you here. Supper, gotta go. Hey, Garrick, have a great night. I'll see you soon, I am sure. Thank you so much for popping in. All right, let's go to my list here. Almost done, almost through this. Number 5, listen to your players and try to give them as much agency as possible. Listening to what your players say will give you a lot more information than you might think. You will find that your players will suggest things that you didn't think about. And then you'll think, well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe their idea, that what they suspect you're doing, is better than what you were planning, and you might choose to go with it. That's okay. That's actually super okay. It's also good to listen to them if they have a legitimate criticism or something. It's I wish you would do this, or can I make this work? Whatever. Listen to those concerns. Talk to your players. Try to facilitate them running a character that they're excited about and that they want to run, to tell the story of that character. Equipping them to do that is a very important part of playing D&D and leading the game, right? Into the Wind says, DC20 is in the same basic group as DCC and Shadow Dark, little grittier riff off 5e. Oh, I see. Okay. PF1 or 2 and the are all D20, Call of Cthulhu, WHFRP and the are not D&D. Y'all gotcha. Okay, I see now. That makes sense to me. Rivy's Red Room. So when you have time between or after your list, how do you think is best to help a GM as an assistant GM when they largely enjoy improvising? I enjoy your ideas and would like to hear your thoughts on that. Oh, actually, this is a very good question. How could you help a GM as an assistant GM? One of the best things you could do is be available as a rules lawyer. When someone casts a spell, look up that spell, because no doubt someone's going to need that spell description. If your group isn't one that looks up their own stuff, looking up stuff for your GM can be super helpful. Keeping meticulous notes is a fantastic way to help your GM too. If your GM is very busy improvising and you're not recording the session, they probably don't have time to take great notes. I am so thankful for my rules lawyer and my note taker at my table. I have dedicated rules lawyer and note taker at my table. They get magic items periodically in the game, and they get inspiration points for performing these services for me. And they absolutely make the game so much less stressful for me. And so that's super awesome. Another thing you can do is you could talk to your GM about possibly helping to manage things like initiative, manage things some GMs will be okay with this. even running some of the enemy monsters, like it can dip into like making rolls. Maybe they give you a list of stat blocks for like minions and you can just make those rolls and do the math for them. Like that's the thing that some GMs don't want to outsource, but some might want to. And if you're pretty sharp at that kind of thing, and that could help, and you have like large combats where that could be useful, and that can be a useful thing. But those are my top ways of like helping. And so sometimes the idea of an assistant GM is actually a super good idea, and it makes the game run way smoother. All right. The more inspired the GM can be. Oh, wait a minute. No, I missed this. Okay, Sebastian Stark has a tip here. Listening to the players and implementing at least some of their ideas is great advice and something I've done many times. This is why player engagement is so important. The more engaged they are, the more inspired the GM can be. This is super true. When my players are really engaged, I'm just like up there. It's like a high, to be honest. It's like, oh yeah, heck yeah, this is going great. But when the players are kind of dull and they're not engaged, and it's like, oh man, this is a bummer. I got to get them into it, and that's actually kind of a hard situation, but sometimes you can get them into it. Sometimes you can't. With more practice, you'll get better at it. But anyway, Sebastian Stark, I'm going to continue. I'll add, don't just use generic magic items from the books. Create custom versions of those items and tie them into the lore of your world. I 100% agree. I love a good homebrew magic item. I love it. I love it so much. Awkward GM Corbin says, quick reference sheets are important to help speed up combat and ability lookup. This is super true, especially like I always write down stuff for my NPCs. Like as the GM, I kind of know what the enemies are probably going to be using, what the NPCs are going to be using. I can print all that stuff out and have it ready. This will make it so I don't have to look it up in the book. And this is very, very good. Into the Wind says, I have a secondary market in town for intel on the area, which lets the PCs sell essentially their session notes and lets them pick which faction gets the intel. Oh, that's actually really interesting. That's actually an in-game incentive to keep session notes. That is a really good idea. Into the Wind. I have never thought of doing that. That is a great idea. So you can have them, and if they keep good enough session notes for you, they can basically sell that, maybe get gold, loot, whatever. That's actually really awesome. Twin Steel says, yeah, I had a friend who used a co-DM to great effect. It also helped teach the other guy how to do the job. Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing I used to do is one time I was running this big group. We had like 13 players. Like we would regularly run 10 to 11 players, but if everyone showed up, we would have like 13 or 14 players. And it got to the point where I was like, man, like one night in particular, we had like 16 people. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to do everyone justice here. So I had a friend who was actually like beginning to GM. He was learning how to play, like he was running stuff. And I was like, dude, do you want to like do a thing where we split the party tonight and half of them get like sucked to a different world and you go run them like in the other room, and we'll just run 2 parties tonight, but it'll be in the same campaign. Like if everything you do will consider canon, it'll just be in a different realm. Like, and this was wild time. And he was like, oh yeah, heck yeah. And that was so much fun. And it worked out really, really good. But that's kind of another like co-DM situation I've had happen before. Dank Money says, I created special weapons for each PC and drew pictures of them. Then rendered them with AI image generator. The players loved it. Oh, heck yeah. How do you go over recap? We all roll D20. Lowest goes unless D20 is rolled. Then they can pick who does the recap. I follow along and add extra important details they missed during the actual recap. Actually, the way I do recap is I like to do recap, but I like to read it in a very dramatic voice, like a theater voice. Like I boom it out kind of like I'm giving a speech at a play. I think it's really fun. So that's what I usually do. Because I enjoy doing it. And I love reading the notes because then usually I think the notes are so much fun and they're so funny. So, and because our note taker, the way that they write the notes, like it puts a little of his humor into it. So I think it's so much fun. So I do like to read them out loud. Awkward Jim Corbin says, I've helped my players make character sheets and created outlines that categorize spells as for combat, investigation, social stealth, or any time to help them know which scenario ability is used. Yeah, actually, that's super helpful for players who are not quite sure how to run particular classes, especially if, Awkward Jim Corbin. I think that's kind of what you're talking about. It sounds like I once had a brand new D&D player try to run a paladin, a 5e paladin, and the 5e paladin kind of has like a sequence of things you should do to maximize damage. I love paladins. Paladin's my favorite class, and he was just really struggling, and I was kind of like, why isn't he channeling and smiting and blah 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 in this order. Like, why isn't he using his paladin abilities? And so I asked him after a session of realizing he wasn't doing this, and he was like, "What are you talking about? I feel like I'm not doing enough damage. I don't know what I'm doing." And so we created a sequence list for him for his paladin, and it worked way better. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to know. Sometimes it takes a little practice to even figure out how to run a class optimally. And running it optimally isn't always the goal either. But players like to do as much damage as they can generally, especially if they're in a bad situation. And knowing how to do that is a lot of fun. As a GM, you can help with that. Let's see here. Life Fighter Gaming, thank you. Encouraging everyone to hit that thumbs up. Yeah, hit that thumbs up button. Thank you so much. It does help the channel, helps my videos to grow, helps me to reach more people, and helps me to meet more people, which is super awesome. Thank you so much. TSL Frontman says, meta-currencying your game notes for your players to spend is a great idea. Can't believe this is the first time I've heard of that so succinctly. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Twin Steel says, as long as everyone participated in a recap, they get inspiration and I fill in the gaps. That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's super awesome. Benjamin Allgood said, I do the same thing Twin Steel does. Awkward Jim Corbin says, correct. That's what I'm meaning. Though I run, I'm sorry. That's a repeat from a previous comment. I'm trying to read I'm trying to read the contributions here. Let's see here. I'm just reading through these here real quick. How do you handle incorporating a new player into an existing campaign? Benjamin Allgood says, okay, so this is a good question. Now, okay, incorporating a new player into an existing campaign will happen. Part of that depends on how the campaign is set up, but I will just find the best way to do it. And I kind of don't overthink it. I have run campaigns in the past where that was a much more complicated thing. Like if the players had traveled from another world and they were tied back to that world. And so when you introduce a new player, you have to figure out if they're from that world or from the old world. And that was kind of tricky. But now in the campaign I'm running right now, it's not that big a deal. For example, the last player we introduced, they joined the game at level 5. One of my friends who wasn't able to start the game with us, but he joined at level 5. And we made him and him and I just talked about it, and I kind of told him where the players were, and I was like, here are my ideas. I think you could be a sailor on the boat they just took over, but you chose not to be in the fight defending it because you thought to yourself, oh, they're going to win. You're kind of a wise strategist. You're thinking, he was playing a rogue, so it's you probably know better. You're I can get in good with this new crew, gonna get on their good side. They seem to have a lot of gold, seem to have a lot of magic items, and so he was like, oh yeah, I like that idea. So he actually was just a sailor, kind of flew under the radar, and then ended up kind of working his way up organically, just with the party. And so that was kind of how I did that. I just tried to think about what would be a fun, common sense way to do this. And one of the most important things about introducing new players in is one of the problems is, how do you get them to care? So the party believes in their mission, or they believe in at least shared camaraderie because they've been through things or because they have some kind of mission. How do you get the new player to care about that? And I think that the answer is to just talk to the player and say, okay, so one thing we do need is we need a motivator. Why would you join this group? We should build this into your character. And that really helps from a role play perspective, I think, to not break immersion. Because if you can get that part fleshed out, then what will happen is it'll be a much more believable joining than if they just kind of join and it's why are you doing it? Well, because I want to play D&D and this is the group, so I got to join now, even though it doesn't make sense with my backstory, which that kind of hurts immersion. It's okay. It's not a big deal, but I think that kind of tying those things together in advance by working on some kind of motivation is really helpful. Anyway, so I hope that kind of answers the question. I could talk a long time about that. I've done some wild things tying players into existing games. Awkward Jim Corbin says, I try not to make my advice notes aren't directly telling my players how to play their character, just to help them learn their abilities exist. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. I love seeing the different ways players play different classes and characters. And sometimes they play classes in a very non-typical fashion, which I love very much. Let's see here. I'm just looking through these. TSL Frontman says, flowcharts for new players' abilities, especially damaging abilities, can be super helpful for new players. Don't be afraid to nudge them. By the way, you've still got your blank to use. This is super true, super true. Remind them that they can use their channel divinity or their eldritch blast. Like, don't let them forget about that. I'm just looking at these notes here real quick. Into the Wind says, I do like Traveler's Way to tie PCs in. You get extra skill points by tying your backstory to at least 2 other PCs. That's actually a really cool idea. I've never actually given like points or anything like that for tying it in. I've always just kind of discussed it beforehand, but giving them that incentive for that extra kind of backstory work is actually super cool. All right, very good. I think we've caught up on some of these comments. I'm going to finish out my little notes here, which actually we've covered way more than this at this point, which is awesome. Number 6, don't be afraid to set common sense parameters that keep your players from becoming all powerful and breaking the game. As a new GM, depending on whether you fall on the strong-willed side or you're a really nice person side, if you're a little too nice, you might be afraid to set parameters, but don't be afraid to set parameters. Part of the GM's responsibility is to set parameters, as long as you don't take away agency or you don't, ruin the game for players. Setting parameters is important because when you set parameters early, it sets them up for doing more powerful things and feeling better about it later. And this is very important. It's very important. If you let players just go willy-nilly, running over everything too soon, then the game loses some of the magic of when they do succeed at hard things, right? Twin Steel says, I like letting players keep expanding their backstory as the adventure unfolds. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that that's part of the fun of it, is sometimes going back and exploring backstories a little deeper. And, I haven't done very much of this, but I want to do it more. I have done it sometimes and it's worked really well. But having sessions where you maybe do a flashback where that player role plays something from their character's like past backstory a little bit with you, just like a little bit, almost like they get knocked unconscious. Like if let's say they go to 0 HP and they go into death saving throws, but you do a quick little 2-minute recap, like your character has a flashback from their past. What are they seeing? Like what traumatic event maybe has this brought up, or what a happy event, or maybe something sad, or maybe just something mundane from their past. Describe it for us, right? And that kind of gets them like thinking about that. And sometimes it catches players a little off guard. However, I've always found that really kind of gets the creative wheel flowing a little bit. And so it's pretty awesome. All right. Into the Wind says, I think that's a good idea. Let's the player get a feel for what works mechanically and then tailor the character around it. They were responding. Okay, that's a response to a different comment. Twin Steel says, yeah, I had situations where a player thought their character would know something important about a scene, and I would ask them to tell me about the time they learned that. Oh yeah, no, that's super awesome. Dank Money says, I ask my player characters direct questions. Do you have family? Are they alive? Why did you choose to adventure? That's actually a really good question. Why did you choose to adventure? Why are you here right now? What's your motivation? That's a really good background question to answer, in my opinion. So that's awesome. Awesome bit of advice. What goals do you want moving forward? Things like that, usually after a session. And that's really good, actually. Okay, so now my tip number 7. Every session, make a list of things you wish you would have done differently, and put that list in front of you. Literally tape it to the inside of your GM screen the next time you play, so that you can get better and improve on those things. This is what I do almost every session. I make a list of like 2 or 3 things that I kind of felt like were fuzzy the last session, like I wish I would have done better. Write them down, like don't forget to do this, and this thing. And then I'll literally either tape it to my GM screen or put it on top of my notes, like on top of my clipboard. And then I look at it throughout the session, and it really helps me to focus on the things that I wished I would have focused better on last session. And I find that has been like super helpful. All right. Carl Swan says, in my new campaign, after session 0, each player was responsible for creating 2 NPCs in the town that they had a strong connection to. Oh, that's super cool. That's kind of like outsourcing some of that creative work to players, which I actually love. That I think that outsourcing creative work to players when it works and when it like makes sense is super, super cool. Very awesome. All right, stream. Well, that's going to be it. I'm going to wrap this one up. We've been at it for 43 minutes. Awesome. This is such a big success for a live stream. To be really honest, I kind of thought I would jump in here and I would maybe have nobody nobody jump in to comment, and I would give my notes and then like sign off and say, thank you so much. But this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. Twin Steel says, I keep a document of loose ends that helps me keep bringing back and incorporating past ideas. Yes, keeping track of the loose ends is actually relatively tricky sometimes, and you have to keep a document. I find that as I get a little older, I'm more likely to forget loose ends. Anyway, Twin Steel, it says, yeah, congrats, Josh. Thank you so much. Don't forget the reflecting on the 2 or 3 things you did well. Age of Adventure, this is a really good tip. Age of Adventure said, and I think this is kind of in response to my 7th tip here of, reflecting on things you wish you would have done better. Don't forget to reflect on the 2 or 3 things you did well. Think about the things you did that really worked. Think about the things that the players really seem to enjoy, because there's magic in those things. Really, really good tip, Age of Adventure. Very good. Thank you. That is actually a fantastic addition to the list of tips, and I'm very, very glad that you brought that up. Sebastian Stark said, thanks, GMP. Keep doing what you do. You are a credit to the hobby. Hey, thank you so much. That's super kind for you to say. Rivers Red Rim says, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing well yourself. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to keep those wins in mind, says Twin Steel. Part of going easy on yourself, that's a good use for stars and wishes. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And then my 8th tip was just listen to player feedback, but we've already covered that, which is really good. So yeah, all right, that's going to be it for this one. Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. And for anyone watching this after the fact, I hope you get some serious value out of some of these tips. And I hope, and I'm pretty sure that it was... make sure I get the name right, Azazel7942. When they see this, I haven't seen them in the chat, but when they see this, they're going to get maximum value out of this. So thank you all so much for helping me do this. Hey, stay tuned. Discord is launching next week. I'm going to have a couple pretty awesome things planned. I'm going to be spending some time in that Discord, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great community. And so keep your eyes open. You can subscribe to my email list by clicking on the link down in the description, and the subscribe. You can download my Ultimate Plot Randomizer, but it signs you up for my email list, and then I'll give you like email updates every so often. And well, not every so often, 3 times a week. So you can stay really on top of the news if it matters. Otherwise, you can see it here on the channel. But thank you all so much. Have an awesome night, and I will see you awesome people on the next one. Now I just got to figure out how to shut this thing off.